I don't remember the first time I heard Kweli. I don't remember what I was doing. There were no remembered witnesses to my doings. But it seems like I've known him forever. He who has moved through mornings and midnights, through deaths and dawns to document our bones, our blood, our lives. Listen to his exact wings strumming lifts from clouds. Listen, a man always punctual with his mouth. Listen to his revolution of syllables, scooping lightning from his pores, keeping time with his hurricane beat, asking us to pick ourselves up and become thunder.
Yeah, they say you can't please everybody. Let's go. Yeah. Hey, damn, you know what that sound like? Feel the heartbeat. Feel the heartbeat on your eardrum. We got a new heartbeat. Feel the heartbeat. Feel the heartbeat on your eardrum. We got a new heartbeat. Yo, what becomes of a dream deferred that never makes it to the world to be seen or heard? Do it breathe? Do it got a heartbeat? Is it alive? Do it leave? Only to become a star in the sky? I believe. Scratch that. I know this ain't my full potential. Only using 10% of my mental on instrumentals. But incidentally, my energy heavenly. Can he be so ill? There ain't no pill on the remedy. The maker of memories possess the recipe to your fate. Make no mistake, there ain't no escaping your destiny, especially when the death do us part like wedding rings. I'll be here forever. Put down on everything. Your alpha and your omega, your beginner and your father, your brother, your lover, your friend, the blood in your vein that gets spilled and runs in the drain. That's right, my flow one and the same. The joy and the pain, my name burner that destroyed a toy in the train. All city, all night, I'm enjoying the fame. I'm a hustler, I'm a gangster and a rebel with the rank of a general. In the battle between God and the devil, I lay claim to your spirit, your religion, your belief system. I'll do your hitting, your catching, and your relief pitching. This kid proficient in every position. The man in your dreams and your nightmares, commanding your vision till it's quite clear like light beer. Yeah, I'm standing right here. I get you hot but stay cooler than the night air. I try to fit it in the same rhyme, but realize I can't be everything to everyone at the same time.
First time I heard him, I was in Japan. I think like the first time I heard him was like the reflection internally.
I hate to say that, but New York native and serious talent. I came all the way from Puerto Rico just to see talent.
Him, most definitely. I need them out here in my life.
It's a rainy morning in New York City.
Like pink. 그렇지 못한 태도 간녀린 몸에 쏙 가려진 볼륨은 두 배로 거침없이 찍힌 굳이 보진 않지 넌지 블랙하면 핑크 우린 예쁘장한 savage 원하던 대놓고 뺐지 너무래도 칼로 무배기 두 손엔 가득한 fat checks 궁금하면 해봐 fact check 눈 높인 꼭대기 물 만난 물고기 좀 톡해 난 toxic 유혹해 I'm foxy 두 번 생각해 흔한 남들처럼 착한 척이 못하니까 착각하지 마 쉽게 웃어주는 건 날 위한 거야 아직은 잘 모르겠지 그저 원하면 test me 넌 불 보듯이 뻔해 만만한 걸 원했다면 I'll wait till I do it hit you with that 뚜루뚜루 Like pink 지금 내가 걸어가는 거린 Blackpink four way 사거리 동서 남북 사방으로 running 이는 버킷리스트 싹 다 버려 널 당기는 것도 멀리 밀치는 것도 제 멋대로 하는 bad girl 조건 싫어하고 누가 뭐라 face drop it's another bang
두 번 생각해 흔한 남들처럼 착한 척은 못하니까 착각하지 마 쉽게 웃어주는 건 날 위한 거야 아직은 잘 모르겠지 굳이 원하면 test me 넌 불 보듯이 뻔해 만나는 걸 원했다면 wait till I do what hit you with that 뚜루뚜루
Welcome to Kojay's Corner, Episode 1, Who Are You? Thank you for stopping by and listening. What I did open up is a track by Talib Kweli. The song is Everything Man. And then it's followed by a track by Blackpink, Duru Duru. Now, I'm not claiming any musical rights here. No, none whatsoever. I'm not monetizing this. I got other ways to get my income and other monetized ideas. Like if I accidentally stub my toe and that gets a million hits, that'd be great. And I'll definitely put a dime on that. But I'm expressing. So I want the credit where credit's due. So hopefully YouTube does that little commercial thing or insert thing. So Talib Kweli and Blackpink can get their little their credit and coin for that. So yes, that's my disclaimer. Anything I play here, I want to be good. No disrespect, no stealing, no nothing. I'm against that. But welcome to the show. I do not hate. I'm not against Marvel. No, I'm not anti them, anti this, whatever. They're all superheroes. I love them all. Which I'll get into a bit on why. Because I think the best way to open up this episode open up this series of podcasts is to introduce myself to you. And this is actually really hard. I hate talking about myself, so I'm going to try and do the best I can. And yeah, we'll go from there and see what happens. But later on in this show, I do have some topics to discuss and address. But I think it's better not to do it in everything all in one clump. So this is just going to be introductory episode. But I do have some people, some good friends, people I know who will be guests on the show. And I am entertaining an idea where I can even talk to subscribers and people watching it. And we can have a little interactive, open conversation thing. Talk about anything. But hey, that's in things to come. We're here right now, and we're going to get through this. All right. Lord Kojay is a geek and an artist. Boom. Now, I'm a geek of a lot of things, really. I guess you could say I'm like a Renaissance geek. As I mentioned, release the Snyder Cut. I am a DC Comics fan. I do like Marvel Comics. I like Ninja Turtles. I like Dragon Ball Z. I like Naruto. I like Super Sentai. I am not a fan of Power Rangers, except the last Power Ranger movie is great. So we'll get into that. I think this is fun if I go through all this geek stuff. So yeah, Master Universe is cool. I mean, I could just go down the list. Star Wars, of course. I love Babylon 5, Exo Squad, a whole bunch of stuff. But now I'm seeing the pile get big, so let's break it down. And come with me on this little journey, if you will, please. I am an 80s kid. So I am raised upon He-Man Masters of the Universe, She-Ra, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Thundercats. This is all back in the day, mind you. Silverhawks, Mask, the MASK, which I forgot what that stands for, but they had the coolest music coming in. Wasn't really into GoBots. That never happened. And cinematic wise, this is interesting. I grew up on actually the first film I ever saw was The Big Boss, starring Bruce Lee. And that, for some reason, I remembered never paying attention to whatever's on TV. You know, I know some Disney movies were always on the background. There's that scene I saw in Bambi that traumatized me as a kid, and I never saw the rest of that movie until I got older. You know, a whole bunch of stuff like that. But, you know, I never paid attention to movies. But that was the first movie I looked up from playing with my toys on the floor and looked on the screen, and I was just mesmerized by the whole story. It was dubbed, of course, but uh, it didn't get me wanting to fight, and it never got me violent or like, because that's a gritty movie. It's like these people in the ghetto rising up against this mafia dude, this gangster, and they take the guy down, but at a huge cost. Like, so many people get killed in the process. It's a vicious film, but what took me was what gravitated me towards it was that struggle and then that fight. Like, the fight had a cause, had a meaning, and for some reason I was just interested, and I wanted the guy to win in the end. But well, you have to see the movie. We'll save that for later. I don't want to spoil anything, and I don't think I already did, anyways. So we're good. But the conflict and the fighting for a good cause was the first thing that captivated me with that film. Then after that, the next film that captivated me would be Conan the Barbarian, the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 80s. And then those films were like huge to me. Now on the side, I was watching Godzilla. Godzilla Returns 1984 or 85. I forgot the whatever title of it. But at the time, I believe it was Godzilla Returns. It's the one that opened up with this animation of a little deer, you know, and I just had watched that Bambi thing, so I was like, oh no, it's a deer. And then this animated Godzilla foot stomps on the deer. It's very famous, iconic if you're a Godzilla fan. But I remember seeing that, and then the whole Godzilla movie. It was just crazy, so many monsters. I do kind of remember looking away from the screen because I do remember as a kid some of the monsters did scare me. There's this mini monster, and I say mini, but it's a size of like a golden retriever. But this crazy bug creature that attacked this dude who got on the boat in the area trying to see what's going on with the whole disturbances or whatever, and it attacked him, and ooh, that scared the crap out of me. Scariest scene ever, you know. And but anyways, at the time, of course, I was a kid. But then I did watch some Rambo, and interesting enough, the first Star Wars movie I saw was Empire Strikes Back. And me as a kid, I thought that was a TV series. Here's why. My father, I found out later that he would rent movies from the video store, VHS tapes. This is the 80s. He would hook up his two VCRs together, and he'd record one on slow. At that time, I think you could only record 3 hours on it. Before they got it up to 4 hours, 6 hours, and then 9 hours. And you saw ones with 12 hours, and the tape is so freaking thin. It always breaks and never lasts long. Ugh. And then when you re-record over it, you get all this weird images and sounds pasted over each other. It was kind of creepy, but at one point we just had one VCR we used just to record random stuff, just to see what we'd get, just to see how deteriorated. Something you can never do with VFX, no matter what Pixar animation degree or whatever the hell you have, you can never create that magic again. Oh, that was fun. Okay, but anyways, rewinding. We're back at Godzilla, right? So, he would record a movie on one, but of course, he doesn't want to waste tape. So then my father would stop the recording, take the tape out when the movie's done, put another one, and start recording again. So, after the recording of Godzilla Returns, because I think the 1984, 1985 title was slapped on later. But after that movie, Empire Strikes Back started. But since it was only an hour left, you couldn't record the whole movie, so it stopped somewhere midway. And then I think he let the movie play, so there's some minutes I was missing. And then he put another tape in to record the rest of the half. That's how I found out what happened when I found those tapes. Because whenever I wanted to see Star Wars, I had to fast forward, stop, rewind, and try and get to a spot where it started after Godzilla, and then watch that first part. And that was it. And I thought that was the whole thing. So it ended with, I think, Han, Leia, and Chewbacca all in the asteroid field somewhere. And Luke is training on Dagobah, and then that's how that ended. And for me, that was like one episode. I lived off of that for like 2 years. Then somewhere along the line, I find that second tape with the rest of it, and then I am just like, whoa. So I watched the rest of Empire Strikes Back. Here I'm thinking it's just the Star Wars show, because I'm thinking, oh, because I know there were movies out, but I only had what I never asked for movies. They just kind of showed up, so I was just like, oh, I'd watch the heck out of them, even if they didn't. They ended on a cliffhanger or something, you know. I was like, okay, that's the way it ends. Life is not perfect. I don't know. As a kid, I figured that out, right? I don't know why, or I assumed that, I should say. So later down the road, um, I watched Return of the Jedi at a friend's house in like 1989 or 1990. It was on the cusp there. But yeah, it was somewhere in the early 90s. I saw Return of Jedi, and I was like, whoa. And I knew Return of Jedi came out, and I thought it was a movie about the TV show, which wasn't the TV show. It was just my dad's VHS tapes of Empire Strikes Back. So I knew it existed because I remember the toys. There was this one friend of mine. She had the Sarlacc pit, Milton Bradley like board game, and you would have your characters go one side and the other side and tip them over into the Sarlacc pit, which had no beak at the time, which is a lot scarier. You know, going into this pit, which is a throat that has teeth around. You can't climb out of that. Ooh, that's so scary. The beak didn't make it scary. So the special editions, I think they were reaching a little bit on some areas that didn't need to be retouched, which we will go into later regarding the Snyder Cut. Anyways, so okay, I guess we're in the 90s now, right? So I saw Return of the Jedi, but also before that, and around that time, I think it was around that time, I can tell, I also saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the film. And I knew of the cartoon show. I saw a couple episodes. I was like, this is cool, kind of goofy. But the character Casey Jones always captivated me. I saw that action figure. I never had it until later down the road. I bought a second version of it. But I remember that character just looking so cool. He looked like a good version of Jason, which, by the way, at the time, I hated horror movies. They frightened the hell out of me. If I saw one, I couldn't get it out of my mind, which I appreciate because it's a horror movie. If you're not horrified, something's wrong, right? So I don't know. I think that it was a beautiful thing that I was terrified by those movies because I think that was the point. And by looking back, I think that was the proper way to enjoy them. You know, like my father never told me that it was just a guy in prosthetics or anything. I was like, oh crap, Freddy Krueger's gonna kill me. I think he said something like, yep, that's why you should go to sleep early so he doesn't get you. I was like, okay, I'm going to sleep early. So clever. So, anyways, back to Star Wars. I saw Ninja Turtles, and I thought that was a perfect movie. As a kid, no movie could be as perfect as that. I watched the hell out of that film. And I remember my kids are saying, it's so dark. And then as a kid, I said this thing. I said, it's actually more serious, not dark. Because this kid was a fan of the animated series, which a lot of us grew to become. But I loved the film because I felt it took itself serious. And I always use that word, serious. It was never dark to me. Dark to me is like Clockwork Orange. But Ninja Turtles the movie was not dark. It was serious. Because, case in point, look, I was Big Boss, right? Conan the Barbarian, okay. Empire Strikes Back, So those three films are like complete serious tones I took as. They were every much filled with fantasy, hope, joy, but they were just I just felt like they were serious tones while still being imaginative and larger than life, and I appreciated that so much. So that was kind of my thing. That was my heart. So I felt Ninja Turtles carried that torch pretty well. So as a kid, I'm getting older. All of a sudden, I get into Bruce Lee, and I see before Bruce Lee actually though, I see this film with Yuen Biao called Above the Law, and it has another title called Righting Wrongs. And there's actually two cuts of the film too. There's a theatrical cut and then a director's cut. And the director's cut is freaking hard. There's actually a third cut, which is midway director's cut and theatrical. It's weird. I saw that somewhere. I don't know if someone just diced it up, but I don't know. But there's 2 to 3 cuts of that film. The director's cut, then the long one, extended one, where a lot of characters get screwed up, is the best. It's so good. Anyways, that movie turned me on to martial arts. And it was around the same time I was getting more into martial arts because of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Because even though there was Kenjutsu used in Conan the Barbarian, I wasn't old enough to appreciate the samurai-like stances that they used in Conan a lot, that they actually trained for. But actually, was it Kendo they did? Anyways, I have to go back and look at the making of again and reread on that to specify. But they were doing a sword martial arts for it. So martial arts has already been introduced to me, but I started appreciating it with Ninja Turtles and then Righting Wrongs. Then it was my cousins in Sri Lanka who said, "Oh, you should check out Bruce Lee." So at the time when I first went to Sri Lanka, it was in '89. I was 9 years old, and I remember Bob Marley was the shit in Sri Lanka at that time, or at least around our circle, my cousins and their friends, and Bruce Lee. So then I was like, "Oh, Bruce Lee, cool!" Oh, and I saw Righting Wrongs there in Sri Lanka. I was like, "Oh man, this is cool." And then when I got to back home in America after our little stay there, it was I had this intrigue about martial arts. So then I discovered Enter the Dragon, and woof, that blew my mind away. I loved and watched that all the time, and which would segue into Mortal Kombat. That was starting to come into my life. And I heard about the game and I read up on the game. I got the game facts, the game guides, the game powered, whatever. I read up on the comics. Yeah, Mortal Kombat had comics that came out. I read up on those, and oh, it was so cool. And also that time I was getting back into comics. I said Marvel, but yeah, I did get into Marvel comics in the 90s. A lot of them. Now, the first comic book I ever had and read was a G.I. Joe comic, actually, where the team were going into, and I still have that comic book, but it's so old, and I had it as a kid that the cover it just deteriorated. It just ripped off. So that G.I. Joe comic is legit, though. They are actually, in that comic, they're in Tibet, and they're trying to get these Russian soldiers out. Not even Cobra. Or maybe they're Cobra teamed up with them. But anyways, I saw, and early on, that was the first comic I had. The second comic I had was this one with Batman trying to take this guy down who was killing homeless people and slaughtering them. So those are my two first comics. A G.I. Joe comic where I know on the TV show that no one gets shot with bullets or stabbed, but in the comics, they do. So I was like, okay, it's just a medium thing. So with Batman, that comic I had, I was like, wow, this is horrific. He deals with very horrific people. That was my impression of Batman. No detective, no martial arts, no this and that. I just thought he had a bunch of gadgets and he stopped bad guys. That's all. And because I was aware of the Adam West show, and I had it on in the background, but I never really paid it too much attention. Because after you see Bruce Lee on screen, any fight after that looks stupid. And if it's not at that caliber, you know what I mean? So I never took that show seriously as a kid. I watched it and I thought it was interesting. It was entertaining, but I never took it seriously as a kid. I was like, whoa, I want to be like Batman, punch like Robin, Witcha. Actually, no, I was just like, oh, I'm gonna like punch someone, do some martial arts. Oh, but I didn't understand it at the time. So, anyways, getting back to the '90s. Sorry, I do kind of ramble, but I guess this is the right outlet for that, right? So back at the '90s, martial arts. We got Enter the Dragon coming to my life, preparing for Mortal Kombat. Sounds like I'm going to the match. No, but preparing to get that game Mortal Kombat, because at the time I had no console. I just had drawings of Mortal Kombat, and I had the game strategy guide for the Mortal Kombat game before I even had any console to play it. Now, getting in, I skipped something important in the 80s because we tapped comic books, we tapped movies, we need to tap video games because that's coming into play. And this is all part of the podcast. It's like everything's into play with Lord Kojay. So, anyways, in the 80s, I was never addicted to a game. I was addicted to a game system. I had Atari. It was clearly a hand me down from my father. And I had Missile Command, Human Cannonball, I had Pitfall, and I had Tanks, which had a mode of planes in it too, which I liked. I had Pac-Man, which is not like the arcade. It actually, he looks like this cheese slice going around, and his mouth just had this slow motion, like not like mumbling gesture. It wasn't a big It wasn't this clapping, chomping little circle. No, it was like this little weird open mouth swallow a pellet. I don't know. It's awkward. And then I had Space Invaders. Did I say Missile Command? Missile Command was actually my favorite one. I felt that was more strategic and more intense. So, yeah. And I would play that randomly, but it would I would get bored of it. So I actually played with my action figures more than Atari. But Atari was the first console I had. Second was the NES. I got the NES in the 90s. I would have to say, looking back, it'd have to be 1991. I had the NES. The NES came into my life. But here's the thing. I only got games that my mom got me. I didn't go to the store to pick out any of my games. My mom, she got us the NES, and it had the Blaster, and it had that one game that had either Duck Hunt or Super Mario Brothers. That was it. That was all we played. We would only get a game on either one of our birthdays. And when I say our, I have two younger sisters, and I love them to death. They're my best friends, and I would not be a good person. I wouldn't be the person I am without them. And without them, I think I would not be. I think I would be a bad person. I really feel like they've had that much of an impact on my life, and I love them dearly. So, that is the hour, and I'm talking about when we got the video game. So we would have to wait for our birthday or Christmas to get a new video game. So the next game we got, and I know my mom and whoever did their homework, because the next game we got was a puzzle game called Lolo, Adventures of Lolo, and that game is friggin' awesome. It is still challenging today to play, and they have it on the Nintendo eShop, because we definitely bought it digitally and we played it on Nintendo Wii. But yeah, that game was the business. But another game I was actually in love with in the 80s, now that we bring it to it, is Double Dragon. Now, we're going back into the 80s because I totally forgot this. You know, I'm in my late 30s, so I'm forgetting some things now and then. So, that's just a little jab at myself. So, anyways, going back to the 80s, I grew up in the Bay Area. San Francisco is a home to my heart. There was this pizza spot my dad would take me to. And I would always go to that pizza spot for pizza. There was no Pizza Hut. I didn't know any Domino's except from Ninja Turtles later on. We just had that pizza spot. And I think the pizza was good, but my most memorable moment was they had these two arcade systems. And one, I think it was Time Splitters, Time Heroes. Oh, I forgot. I have to talk to my boy Yokai Robo. Shout out to Yokai Robo, by the way. He found the game for me, and I keep on forgetting. I think it was Time. No, is it Time Crisis? Anyways, it was a bird's eye view, looking down. You're like one of these two or three characters who shoot up these lasers or these kind of missiles or bullets from this like cannon thing. Kind of looks like Space Harrier without the flight. And you would go through this dinosaur period, the Roman Empire, and then this other period, and you just, try and get the hell out of there. You just destroy all these enemies, these hordes of armies. I don't know why, but you just did. But anyways, there was a game to the left, and it's Double Dragon, the arcade, the very first one. The kidnapper and then the two guys are like, no, we gotta get you back. And then you go through all these 80s kung fu Last Dragon type characters, and you make your way to save her, Marion. And that, I never got to play the game all the way through the arcade. A few times my father had coins, so I got to play it and then die. I could never get it past the first stage. I'm a kid, I don't know what to do. But I would always look at the screen in demo mode and pretend I was playing it. So I loved Double Dragon so much. Now we're getting to the back to the 90s, right? So I love Dragon Ball. Oh, not Dragon Ball, Double Dragon so much. I love Double Dragon. I even had this Tiger handheld video game system, which is pretty much like what is it? Where are those little pets, digital pets you'd have on a keychain? Dang, I'm forgetting the name of it. It wasn't Pokemon. Pretty cool. Anyways, it was these little handheld games that had the same type of screen as a digital watch, and it had these preset drawings of these characters, and then it would actually work like a video game. And some of them were actually really fun to play with. I had Gauntlet, I had Batman Returns, I had Double Dragon 2, and Double Dragon 2 was my favorite. My mom convinced it to give it to my cousin in Sri Lanka. He's like, oh, we're just visiting them. They don't have video games. Let them have it. And I was like, okay, I'll let you have it. But on the plane ride, I couldn't help but miss that handheld video game. I was like, no. This is before Game Boy. This is probably what gave me the idea for Game Boy. But yeah, maybe I could put a link of it. I'll definitely find a picture of these type of games I'm talking about and put it on my Instagram. So go check that out. If I ever do. But I will. No, I will. I definitely have to. But yeah, I played Double Dragon. And now to the point. We're at where we have the Nintendo, and it's the 90s, and my mom gives me Double Dragon on NES. Double Dragon 3. That's the one that everyone hates, but it's all I had, and it was Double Dragon, the first Double Dragon game I had, and I played the hell out of it. I love that game, even to today. Now, here's the funny thing. My mom didn't let me play the game unless I read the complete instruction manual. And I hated her then, but I appreciate her now for that, because now I appreciate, I don't know, reading and knowing more, because that instruction manual was actually a fun read, because I was so excited. I was like, damn it, I have to read. And then I started reading it. I was like, oh, this is actually cool. I'm getting excited to play it. And then I already knew how to play it. So I appreciated that. So thank you, Mom. Thank you, Amma. I appreciate that. So yeah. So, what have we learned? 90s, Enter the Dragon, martial arts, Mortal Kombat, which my cousins had the Sega Genesis, so I got to play Mortal Kombat through, them having it. Until later down the road, they just handed it down to me by the time I had a Nintendo 64. So, I'm a gamer. I'm into martial arts, and I love movies still, and I am getting into this beautiful phase of getting into comics again. Now, I started reading comics at that time in the 90s. We had X-Men come out. X-Men #1, drawn by Jim Lee, and that was the mecca. In fact, the first comic I ever bought myself was an Uncanny X-Men comic at the end of the introductory adventure of Bishop. It was the one comic that was solely about Bishop, and at the end of it, it ended where Professor Xavier is telling the rest of the X-Men team, is like, this is Bishop, the newest member of the X-Men. And I was like, what? And that comic went through his origin of why he and his two soldiers were there hunting down these criminals from the future and going AWOL all over the place. And it had that whole story. The little hint that Gambit is probably the one who betrays the X-Men, but we're not sure. It was such a crazy, gripping story. I loved it. That was the first comic I bought myself. I remember we were in Solvang up north. I'm a Cali guy, by the way. And, yeah, I just moved from North Cal to SoCal. So anyways, That's all. The two main places I've lived the whole part of my life. So, anyways, so X Men, that was my first comic, and the animated series had launched around the same time as the Jim Lee comics, and they just seemed everything fit beautifully. You'd watch the show, shit would go down in the show that was going on in the comics. Sorry, I do have a potty mouth every now and then, but I mean no ill will. But those comics were like strong, and I was like, they had a show to go with it. The action figures were sick coming out with it. I got into X Force, I got into Excalibur, I got into X Men and Uncanny X Men, X Men. They were like my first comic book loyalty as far as strictly just comic book characters, like superhero wise. Because the other comics I read loyally was Conan the Barbarian under Marvel, G.I. Joe under Marvel, and Punisher. I never saw him as a comic book superhero. I just saw him as just a regular guy, because I would read comics from my cousins, and they had Dark Knight Returns. That was the only DC comic I read and liked. I didn't really give DC any time of day, which is interesting, right? But anyways, I also got into Spawn. Spawn #1 came out, and I still have that comic that I bought. Well, not with my money. My cousins gave me either like $10, and then I would just go whatever in the comic store, pick whatever I want, right? So yeah, with those $10, I got GI Joe comics by Marvel, which was a great run. Conan the Barbarian, X Men comics, Spawn, and that was my life. And oh yeah, and I never collected Punisher. I just read them from my cousin because he loved Punisher. So I read Punisher Warzone, Punisher War Journal, and regular Punisher, and anywhere Punisher showed up. For some reason, I had to read it. Like there was this amazing Spider-Man comic where the Daily Bugle gets like a turned into a hostage situation. These guys take over the Daily Bugle, right? So then Spider-Man, he's got to like go up and take all these guys on this floor, da 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 da, and he has help from the Punishers taking out people, da 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 da. And then it was cool because Spider-Man doesn't kill people; he just webs them up and beats the crap out of them, right? Punisher just straight up kills them. And I remember the ending of that comic book. It was really beautiful, actually, because okay, Punisher and Peter Parker, Spider-Man, they save the day, right? And then there's this part where Punisher, he's got this calm, this walkie-talkie in his ear, uh, where he sees Spider-Man, he sees that Spider-Man's okay, and Spider-Man is with Mary Jane, and where Punisher is looking from his perspective, it looks like the sun is setting, and then you got this glow creating Spider-Man and Mary Jane in kind of like the silhouette where you can't really see clearly, but a Punisher could see that Peter Parker had brown hair, according to the art. Um, and someone on the comm is saying, "Hey, is everything all right? What's up, Frank?" He's like, "Yeah, all is good here," whatever he said. But I just remember the drawing, the visuals of Punisher looking at Spider-Man unmasking himself. He's not seeing him from the front, so he can't figure out it's Peter Parker. I don't even know if he knew, but you just see that tender moment where he just witnesses uh, Spider-Man take off his mask, hold Mary Jane, pulls him close to her. I mean, pulls her close to him, and then they have a beautiful kiss. And Punisher just looks at it, turns around, and walks away quietly. He doesn't say, "Hey, I'm all right. We did a good job." He lets them have their moment. And knowing Punisher, that he lost his family, his wife and kids, I mean, that was just a nice, small 3 or 2 panel storytelling that was very gripping, and I loved that comic for it. In fact, now that I say that, I'm adding that to my comic list when I go to the comic store. I started a new thing where I'm buying back issues of comics that I'm starting to remember that I loved, and I want to find those stories and then collect them and have them in my little collection here. So there we go. Boom. Into comics. Marvel comics were amazing, and they still are. And that was the 90s. Then something happens midway in the 90s. Everything gets a lot darker, seriously. And I'm leaving my personal stuff out right here. I'm just following the geek journey. And because this is a very important communication between these stories that resonate with us and how we grow up as an individual, which I think that is definitely what the podcast is mostly going to be about. So these stories and this richness of, just life. But anyways, so we get that um to the middle point, and I come across this comic book and film, The Crow, and I hear it's the son of Bruce Lee, and I'm like, what? He acts too? Da da da. What? And I find out that he died in the making of it, so it was released a little bit later or something like that, and or with this uncomfortable shadow over it. It was just like a mystery movie, but I heard about the comic, and I really want to see the film. So I actually got the film. God bless my mom. She didn't know it was going to be so graphic. She just thought, okay, it's R for violence. Little did she know. But anyways, that was my movie at 15 years old. But um, the cruelty, the profanity, the violence, that again, that didn't grip me. What gripped me was the fact that this character had um, such a tragic ending to his life, and that pain never went away. The idea that an unresolved and injustice, that pain never goes away, resonated with me. Because the most important thing that he did when he came back was to right the wrongs that were done to him and his one true love. So it was a true justice, poetic justice for victims story. And that's what I took it as. I didn't think it was cool to, put on face paint, shoot people. Blah, blah, blah. I never thought about that. For me, at this point, the violence was just the the details of the battle that the hero has to go through to save the day, to achieve justice. And that movie, I felt, and granted, I'm 15 years old watching this, right? So, which I probably shouldn't have, but um, I believe at that point no one was tripping out about my moral code. But uh, the story was in a dark, dark place. But that movie I could say is dark because the place, the world is very dark. There's a loss of justice. There's hope is like kind of like a myth amongst the streets there. And just the fact that that is the setting, but I saw like a glimmer of hope with all that red, which was like um, the heart of who they were. Even in the traumatic situations, I was red too because that was their life. I just found that there's a sense of beauty of what needs to be fought for, even in a world where such beautiful light is very minimal. But that minimalism of hope is enough to fight for a brighter, better day. And that's what I got from The Crow. So that resonated with me, obviously. And it was then when I started to be interested in storytelling beyond comic books, beyond video games. And I was starting to actually have a love for the filmmaking process. And that was the turning point of me coming to where I am today. So that's where I came as a geek. That's my whole geek story. I love film. Now, brings us to today. Now that we're caught up. And I said I want to get this short and I don't want to ramble, but we got, since we're all caught up, where Kojay's coming from, video games and all, and I can go into detail. I just had to stop at, a certain point. Another important thing is this release the Snyder Cut movement. I believe it must be put out, and I'll go into details about that on another episode. But being a fan of that and anything else, there's one important thing I want to lay down the law for, is that no one has any real justification to disrespect someone else's love for stories of heroes overcoming villains to right justice. Okay? There is no reason a DC person can say I fucking hate Marvel people, or vice versa. There is no reason for that. There's no need for that. Now, seeing heroes fight each other, we have pro wrestling for that. That is a beautiful thing. That's the show of heroes and villains fighting to be the champ. That's pretty much a live action story of any fighting game played out in story mode with the gameplay. That's what that is. And we have that for that. I mean, heroes versus heroes is a horrible thing. Civil War, Captain America died. That's Civil War 2, Hulk was So which I believe that shouldn't be spoilers because that's like history now if you've been reading comics. But MCU fans, I love the MCU. Negative fans of MCU, no. DCEU, I love DCU. Negative fans of DCEU, I do not love. I don't appreciate that. Just because you like one thing doesn't mean you have to hate the opposite. That is a false perception that a lot of people got going on. Just because preference is different doesn't mean someone's preference is a sin. That's where you get into practicing prejudice, because prejudice and racism, all that stuff is petty. It's putting someone higher and another person lower based on not things not tied to your character, and a lot of times it's propaganda based, and especially with superheroes who are fighting evil in the name of good. That theme, how is it that people who love that are toxic? Are they not paying attention to the stories? Are they not paying attention to their heroes? That goes for everyone on any franchise who's being a dick to anyone else. All right? So that just doesn't make sense to me. You can like and you can not like something. That is fine. I think people feel that they're pressured, like, oh, because I'm a comic book fan, I have to like everything comic book. No, you can like your own comic book heroes. You can have your own reasons for that too. I don't like Power Rangers because I feel they're the watered down version of the original, so I don't like Power Rangers. If you love Power Rangers, the American ones, am I gonna say you're an idiot? No. I question your preference, but I don't think you're wrong for your preference. You know what I mean? I just don't like Power Rangers for myself. I like Super Sentai, the original, and I'll say that. But let's say you are a fan of Green Ranger, Tommy the Green Ranger, right? And I'm a fan of Zoo Ranger, the Dragon Ranger, right? So we're still cool. I mean, Tommy is still a hero, an awesome guy. Same with Dragon Ranger. And who I'm forgetting his name right now, which is horrible. I just watched that. But what I'm getting to the point is, just because you like one thing doesn't mean you have to hate the other thing. And just because you like one thing doesn't mean you have to like the other thing. You could choose what hero you like and follow. It's simple. That's all. It's like you don't see people going, Snickers is the best. To hell with you. Twix is the best. You're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. You like peanuts with your caramel? Nah, you're an idiot because caramel without peanuts is the best. You don't hear any of that. And I think, because in the 90s, we didn't have much. We just had Batman cinematically. And then some low budget Marvel films that no one even knew about and talked about, right? But they were around. And Blade came out. That was dope. I love Blade. But yeah, Men in Black, that came out in what, 96, 97, or 98? I feel like it was towards the end of the 90s. But that was a well budgeted and very successful and entertaining film that is also a comic book. But yeah, back then, I remember in the 90s, we all kind of whispered, kind of talked, hoping that superhero movies would be treated on the scale as Star Wars. Because we're like, they can never do this. We felt it was so limited. And then there was a shift when these movies started coming out, and I think it started with Blade. And I think George Lucas with his prequels was stepping. I mean, the movies are questionable to degrees, and I can go into that later. I want to bring in Simtar for that, Mr. Sizzla. But what I want to say is that the quality for special effects and fantasy action went up, and the superhero genre picked up. It wasn't laughable since after it was hard after Batman and Robin. That kind of killed the medium, I want to say, because the medium of comic books could be in any form. It doesn't have to be superhero. You have Scott Pilgrim, where it's pretty much satire, and then you have A History of Violence. You have V for Vendetta. You have all these other different types of comic books. You even have comic strips like Dick Tracy and Office Space, and come out, and Mystery Men, and Men in Black. That's also a comic book. So G.I. Joe, that's comic book too. So you don't have to think comic book movies always have to be this certain successful algorithm. It's a medium. There should be different kinds. There should be different tones. We need our Hellboys, It's great. We need Dragon Tiger Gate, We need the Hulk. We need Lady Death. We need Akira. Live action, I don't know if we need Akira, but we got Itchy the Killer too. So, Old Boy, bunch of stuff, right? So, my thing is, y'all don't have to hate each other. So yeah, that is episode 1, Kojay's Corner, and I hope you're doing well wherever you are. So, and thank you for listening if you made it this far. Much appreciated. Release the Snyder Cut. Alright, take care. Next episode. God bless.
The sun beats down my neck, my forehead beats up in sweat, and the earth that I till won't conceive. I go about my day, knowing all will pass away. In the end, I will remain just as I am. Yet still I'm holding on to you. It happens all the time. In the smoke rings up my mind. I am famished in this field where I stand. Even with all of the stress, you're my love.